Hey everybody, Steve Prziborowski here. Welcome to episode 14 of Reach for the Firefighter Badge. Episode 14 is going to answer a question I get asked a lot. What type of volunteer opportunities are out there for a firefighter candidate? Someone that actually wants to be a firefighter, someone preparing to be a firefighter. What type of volunteer opportunities can you do? So let's take some time to discuss some opportunities. As always, here's my two websites, code3firetraining.com as well as schmofire.com. Lots of information on there if you click the free stuff links. Whether you're a current firefighter or a future firefighter, a lot of great information I think that can benefit you both now as well as the rest of your career. So these webinars are based on two of the books I've been fortunate to publish. Number one, The Future Firefighter's Preparation Guide, and then number two, Reach for the Firefighter Badge, both of which are available off my websites, and both of which are separately different, but they complement each other as part of a package to help you be that best firefighter candidate you can be. So the question comes up, why do I need to volunteer? I just want to become a firefighter. Well, think about this. Many oral boards ask that question. We'll talk about oral boards as we, move on in future episodes, but a common question that some oral boards ask, either the first oral interview or maybe it's the second level interview, which is known as the Chief's interview. It's a question you may get asked. What do you do to provide community service in your community? Now, the question may be community service, it may be volunteer, maybe something like that. When you're asked the question about community service and volunteering, if you have an answer like, well, I don't do anything at all, I'm too busy. I work full time and I've got a family and I just don't have time to volunteer. Well, okay, it's better than saying nothing at all, but you really didn't say anything. All you're doing is making excuses. And that's, I think, the challenge is that if you understand what you're getting into, you'll hopefully understand the importance of volunteering. Because think about it, what do firefighters do? We work for the government. Whether you like the government or not, we work for the government. Whether we're city firefighters, county firefighters, federal firefighters, state firefighters, we typically work for the government unless you're a private firefighter. But most firefighters work for the government. And as governmental employees, we are civil servants. We are there to protect the community, protect the citizens, protect the residents, protect anybody that may need our assistance, whether it's an emergency 911 call or someone just knocks on the firehouse door, asking for some advice. So you got to be prepared for that question. Now, a number of years, the city of Oakland, on their fire chief's interview, the fire chief would always ask candidates, so what do you do community service-wise, or how have you volunteered for the city of Oakland? Now, I remember hearing some candidates say, well, hey, I live an hour or two away. I don't live in Oakland, so I can't volunteer there. Yeah, you can. If you want to volunteer bad enough, you can find a way to volunteer some time. It just takes a little bit of homework, doing some research. You can find volunteer opportunities in every community across the country. So there should be no excuses. Well, I'm busy. I've got a full-time job. I'm going to school. I got a family. Okay, let's stop. Think about this. You got to be creative at it. Some people think, well, I got to find something to do for a day. Well, you don't have to find something for a day, let's say 8 hours. A lot of people say, well, I don't have time to do the 8 hours or 6 hour or even 4 hours out of a day. Okay. Can you find maybe 15, 20 minutes or maybe a half hour or even an hour? Once a week, once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month. If you can't find an hour once a month, and again, it may not have to be in an hour block. It could be little segments depending on the type of volunteer work. You got a time management problem, I hate to say it. So with 24 hours in a day, if you want this bad enough, you can find some ways to volunteer. And I'll try to offer some suggestions about how to volunteer because there is no one right way. But when that Oakland fire chief, and I don't know if the next Oakland fire chief will be asking that question, but when that Oakland fire chief or any fire chief asks you the question, so what are you doing to volunteer in our community? You don't want to be the one that says, well, chief, I live an hour away, so I don't volunteer in your community. Okay, that doesn't help the situation at all. Why should he or she hire you? You can live an hour away, you can live a state away, you can live across the country, but if you've done your homework for that fire department you're applying for, which you should be doing, if you've done your homework by talking to firefighters, say at the Oakland Fire Department, those that really liked you and took a liking to you and figured you had good potential probably would have told you, hey, when you get to the chief's interview, be prepared for him or her to ask you the question about volunteering in Oakland. So if you've done your homework well in advance of your interview, you would have known, oh crap, I better find something to do in Oakland. So even if you live 5 states away, I bet you may be able to find something online, or maybe have to go out there. Why do I want to go out to Oakland? You know, I live in whatever, Texas. Well, if you're taking the time and effort and energy to apply for, say, the Oakland Fire Department, you can't just, well, you could do your application online, not have to show up in person. You're probably gonna have to show up for a written test. You're definitely gonna have to show up for an oral interview. You're probably gonna have to show up in person for a chief's interview, the background investigation. So you're gonna be making multiple trips out to Oakland, which is fine. If you want the job, go for it. Time management skills, planning skills, organizational skills are critical for firefighters. So while you're out there for maybe a firehouse visit, maybe see if you can visit a couple firehouses and then do something volunteer-wise. If you're that hell-bent on getting this career, you can be creative and find ways to make it work, even if it's only maybe a half hour, an hour, and then at least you have an answer. So when the chief asks you a question of, so you live in Texas right now, what do you do in the community of Oakland? And he is expecting you to say, well, nothing, chief, like most would probably do. But instead, you've got that answer. Well, chief, I'm glad you asked me that question. Even though I do live in Texas, my goal and my dream is to move to the San Francisco Bay Area and serve the Oakland Fire Department as a firefighter. So knowing that that's typically been a question that's been commonly asked over the years, I took the time to get involved, not yesterday, because that shows me you're last minute Larry or last minute Lisa. I took the time to get involved months ago. While I started doing my research on the Oakland Fire Department by stopping by firehouses, I made a couple trips out here knowing that I better visit some firehouses. I also got very creative in the sense that I knew while I was out planning some fire station visits, I took the time to volunteer at a church or volunteer at a school or volunteer here or volunteer for the city. It wasn't a lot. It's only maybe, whatever, 12 hours over the last year. But it's what I was able to make do given that I lived in Texas. I was looking for some online volunteer opportunities, but I couldn't find any. But I definitely knew that I had to do something. So that's what I have to offer right now. Okay, put yourself in the fire chief's position. He or she is going to say, this person wants the job. They want the career. They want this bad. They're willing to do something to get it, not just, here's the badge. So find ways to make it happen. So besides an oral board question, it's the right thing to do. Think about it. Civil servant, as I mentioned. Firefighters are governmental employees. We're there to serve the community, serve the people. So volunteering is something that is the right thing to do. Even if you're not a firefighter, let's think about that. Even if you're not a firefighter, it's the right thing to do, to give back, pay it forward, and volunteer wherever. Do something, volunteer, you'll feel good. Plus it's something to put in your resume. It can show your commitment and dedication to something, whatever that something is. And notice I haven't said volunteer firefighter. It's hard to get volunteer firefighter opportunities because a lot of communities don't have volunteers. And especially if you live in Texas, you may not be able to volunteer in Oakland, and they don't have a volunteer firefighter program that I'm aware of, but you got to make do. But let's step back to that one question. Let's say the chief asks you the question, so what have you done to volunteer in Oakland? And you've done nothing, which maybe because you live in Texas, you haven't been able to do station visits, whatever else. Well, instead of saying, well, nothing in Oakland, maybe try to steer the conversation a little bit differently by saying something like, well, chief, I knew you'd ask me that type of question. I've done my best to try to coordinate some travel out here on the West Coast to visit some firehouses, but for whatever reason, again, you don't want to make excuses or, downplay things, but I've not been able to make it work. However, in my community of Austin, Texas, this is what I've been doing out in Austin. For the last 5 years, I've been involved doing this, and I've got X amount of hours of volunteer experience over the last 5 years in Austin doing this. May not be Oakland, but it's a hell of a lot better answer than, got nothing. So doing something is better than nothing. And if there's a will, there's a way. And again, you're selling yourself to the chief to basically make him or her make a decision of taking a chance on you. Why volunteer as well? It may be something that allows you to stand out from the other applicants. It may or may not make a difference, but it may allow you to stand out, because when there's hundreds of people, everyone all seems to be the same most of the time in the sense of qualifications. Maybe it's your hours of volunteer time. For example, when I was testing for firefighter, I actually had a chance to volunteer. It wasn't actually with Oakland, and speaking of Oakland Fire has a student firefighter program, ride along program, but it's a student firefighter program through Chabot College's fire technology program, which I believe is still in existence today. Well, I volunteered my time, but I was doing one 24-hour shift a week, if not two 24-hour shifts a week. Over the course of 21 months, I was assigned to different firehouses around the city of Oakland. Again, I'm a student at Chabot College. I get to ride along with the company, and I'm logging 24 hours a day. And you may see, that's not a lot. Well, 24 hours this week, and then you do 24 next week, 24 the week after. Next thing you know, do one 24-hour shift a week. You got 100 hours in the month. And I used to put that on my resume. When we talk about resumes in the future, I'll get more into this, but for right now, for resumes, I'm not a fan of duties, because you know what? No shit. We know what your duties are in most jobs. If you say, well, I'm an EMT for whatever AMR, duties are transporting patients, responding to calls, duh. I know what duties of an EMT typically are. Me being from the point of an oral board raider. Instead of duties on the resume, the stuff you're paid to do, how about the above and beyond stuff? Significant accomplishments. So getting back to my time in Oakland, when I was testing for firefighter, I was doing sometimes a couple shifts a month, and it was not uncommon for me to have hours rack up quickly. And I put those hours on my resume. You know, I put student firefighter, Chabot College Work Experience Program. And when I got hired in my current department, I had 2,000 hours of volunteer experience. 2,000 hours of volunteer experience. Yeah, I was a student firefighter, but I was riding on a fire engine, riding on a truck, getting to hang out at the firehouse, getting to do the job. Obviously not the same as the full-time folks, but I was there as part of their crews and their teams. But again, significant accomplishments, 2,000 plus hours. I believe that made me stand out from the other applicants because of the hours, especially when maybe I went for the oral board, the first oral board, say May 1st. Well, a chief's interview is usually a couple months maybe after that first interview. So when I was racking up hours, I loved it when I'd go to the oral board, say with, 1,200 hours. And then by the time I got to the chief's interview, I'd give the chief an updated resume. He had the original resume from the first time I turned it in, but then he'd say, hey, what's changed? I got 1,500 hours now since I first saw the oral board 3 months ago. Wow, that shows good progress. So maybe it's something to help you stand out. Also, where can you volunteer? Obviously, some fire departments have an opportunity to volunteer, and I encourage you to check their website, knock on the door of the firehouse, see if they have opportunities. May not be called volunteer, so don't be scared away. Well, they just have a reserve program, or they just have a cadet program, or they just have an explorer program, or they just have an auxiliary program. They're all volunteer positions. Don't get scared because it doesn't say volunteer firefighter. There just may be other names. So do your homework, do your research, talk to the crews. Even if you don't have volunteer firefighter experience, so what? Your city, your county, your community is probably always looking for volunteers. It may be on their website. You may go down there and you may see volunteer opportunities. Governmental agencies are always looking for people to step up and volunteer. So again, here's the nice part. You may be able to find something for an hour or 30 minutes, or maybe something online that's a lot easier to meet your schedule. I don't know what it is, but there's stuff out there. Maybe nonprofit corporations. Again, everyone's usually looking for volunteers. Excuse me, private industry may have some opportunity. Anywhere you can find an opportunity. I mean, if nothing else, call up a place. Find your passion, find your love, find something that's really exciting or interesting to you, or maybe that you have a background in. Let's say I'll just say an attorney right now, and you want to become a firefighter. It happens. A lot of people have great careers that are sometimes making more money than a firefighter makes, but for whatever reason, they don't want to be an attorney anymore or whatever. It happens a lot. They want to be a firefighter to work 10 days a month and have the camaraderie, the teamwork. I get it. Well, let's say you're an attorney, a licensed attorney. Maybe you can find ways to help mentor others or coach others or provide free pro bono services. If you're creative, you can find opportunities. I mean, churches, schools, the list is endless of where you can find volunteer opportunities. But the key is having something is better than nothing on your resume, because all you're doing at that point is making excuses. when those that are smart and creative can, instead of making excuses, can make it happen. So in closing, there's no right way to serve as a volunteer. You know, the key is finding something to volunteer your time for, and more importantly, keep track of your hours to put in your resume. And not just put on your resume, but talk about when you're asked that question, that opening statement in the oral interview of tell us how you prepared yourself to become a firefighter. That's one of the things you can sell, is that, hey, I've got 500 hours of volunteer experience at wherever. So the best oral board candidates come across obviously with great communication skills, but also those that can come across as unique. And so that's why when people say, well, I want to be a volunteer firefighter, that's what they want, right? No, I've been on a lot of oral boards where pretty much most of the candidates, they all are the same. They all come in with their EMT, they all come in with their academy, they all come in as volunteer firefighters. Give me something different and unique that stands out. I don't know what that is. Maybe church, maybe school, maybe, I don't know. So find that uniqueness that maybe sets you apart from the others, and maybe it's just the amount of hours you've involved. So if you're going to get involved and volunteer, keep track of your hours, be able to talk about them, and be able to talk about how that benefits your community. And more importantly, do your homework and research. And when you find out that past history shows that that department you're applying for, ask those questions. You better have a good answer, especially if it's that community. So as always, thank you very much for the gift of your time, everybody. It's, you know, I'm really enjoying doing these right now. I'm hoping some of the information I'm sharing is of value to you in some capacity, maybe now, maybe in the future. Here's my contact information, my social media sites. Please feel free to reach out. Feel free to connect with me. Until the next episode, take care, be safe, and look forward to chatting with you again.